Welcome to the Neurodiverse Teacher Podcast. Today, my guest is Tim McCarthy. Tim has a master's degree in education and is a Grandmaster rank in martial arts. He has combined his years of experience as a classroom teacher and administrator in both public and private schools with even more years of experience teaching and developing martial arts programs to create a simple plan for the education of children. Tim has spent years researching developmental child psychology, chosen the best studies, and distilled them into simple, understandable language. He has then drawn on his vast knowledge of activities that help children become stronger physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and arrange them accordingly to the capabilities of children at each age. His unique perspective, combining Eastern and Western educational philosophy, creates a powerful roadmap for raising balanced children in an increasingly unbalanced world. Additionally, Tim is the author of the book Raising Four-Dimensional Children in a Two-Dimensional World. Wow, that is quite the resume there. So welcome, Tim. We are very excited to have you on the Neurodiverse Teacher Podcast.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. And gee, I kind of sound pretty good based on that.
I was very impressed. I was like, wow, I want to be Tim when I grow up. This is a pretty interesting life that you have. And I love your combination of education and martial arts. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, it's been a long journey, but an extremely fun and, for me, educational one.
That is fantastic. So I'm going to start off with this question here, since you have such this array and diverse background. Can you please share with my listeners a little bit more about your background and just the journey that you have been on in your life to get where you are now?
Well, let's see, when I was in college, I decided I wanted to be a teacher. And I got a degree in English education, went out and to find myself and, did a bunch of jobs and took a motorcycle trip and, did that sort of find yourself stuff. Had put out like 220 applications to every school in the entire state and landed one in this little town where during that first year of teaching, I walked outside the classroom one time and there was a horse tied up outside the classroom. Small town.
Okay, yeah.
But anyway, I got some good recommendations and good experience. Moved into the private schools, which is my background, and where I was able to, I felt, teach more morality, and more of the whole student rather than the curriculum. So I did that, moved around a little bit from school to school, moved up in administration, all the time training in the martial arts. And then I was, as the dean of students, I was the disciplinarian in the school. And of course, martial art background, discipline, I was kind of tough. And it was tough on my basketball players. So the last couple of years, I was only the dean and the basketball coach. So I was dealing with bad kids all day and trying to have fun after school. And the basketball kids felt I was too tough on them. So they got together and the parents fired me. Private school, they got together and they managed. And so I didn't want to be just a disciplinarian without the fun. So I ended up quitting at the end of that year. Interesting corollary, that year the boys got caught drinking beer on the bus on the way home from a game. So was I too strict of a disciplinarian? Well, who knows? Went into educational consulting for a while, but decided, actually I did that. I traveled around from county to county helping kids with their computer programs make up for their reading and their math skills, and got fired from that job. Okay, so here I was, honor student, all the way through, got fired from 2 jobs in 2 years. So I had to sit back and say, what do I want to do with my life? And I said, well, if I won the lottery, I'd practice martial arts all day. So I went to my master and said, is there room for me as a martial artist? And he said, well, yes, but sort of like the old kung fu wait outside the temple thing. He said, you have to volunteer for a month with no pay to make sure you really want to be here. Okay, I did it. We formed a great relationship. I stayed with him for 30 years. Yeah. And was the chief instructor. Then he taught me a lot about the martial art business, because one of the big problems with the school owners was they kept closing. They didn't know how to run a business. So you've got 100 students, and all of a sudden they've got no place to train. It's gone. So we helped them stay open with good business practices. We met this guy who was doing after-school martial arts. I don't know if you've seen the signs, after-school summer camp martial arts. We helped popularize that program. I took my educational background and helped the martial art teachers teach a little better, but also add more value to the program, because you can't just do martial arts all day during summer camp. So you got to do other activities. And I said, well, here are some educational activities that you could do. And we developed this whole program. And I'm very proud of it. And when I retired, I said, why can't I take that knowledge of activities and bring it to the average parent so that they could help their child develop, not just physically, the martial arts, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And even if you're not real big on spirituality, I hope you believe in right and wrong and morality. And so that's where, you can relate to that part of what I believe.
That's really interesting. And it almost sounds like your life lined up in such a way that those first two jobs that didn't work out, it was meant to be, because it sounds like it kind of, the universe pushed you in a direction that really aligned you with your passion and combined your background knowledge to really create something that sounds really wonderful for students and allows them to have that discipline that you talked about, to have that focus. And as somebody who has a black belt in Taekwondo, I understand the passion and really the confidence that can come from somebody who's involved in martial arts.
Yeah, so you know what the training is like and how it develops the whole person, and how,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've seen the kids when they come in, they're wee, 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 wee. And 6 months, a year later, yes, sir, they're proud, and they're just not afraid of the world anymore. And so
Mm-hmm.
part of emotional education as well as the moral education, I always say it's important to know how to punch someone, but it's more important to know when to punch someone, when not to punch someone. And that's part of the morality of the martial arts.
Absolutely. So then let me ask you, how does all of this tie into your book then? You wrote this book called Raising Four-Dimensional Children in a Two-Dimensional World. What was your inspiration for this? How does this all tie together?
As I said, the after school program that we developed, and I spent years working on it. And I said, this is great stuff. Why can't I bring it to the average parent? And so, just like in the martial arts, where you teach somebody, okay, this is how, let's do a simple wrist grab. So I grabbed your wrist. Now I got 4 fingers on this side and 1 finger on this side. Which way would you rather escape, against 4 or against 1? Okay, good. And everybody understands that. We don't move on. We say, okay, now you grab you and feel it. Okay, practical applications. It's nice to understand what's going on, but people need a practical application. They need to practice. So what I did is I broke down what's happening in the brain. Okay, so you've got an infant, certainly not like a teenager, but a toddler is not like an infant anymore. A preschooler has moved on from the toddler stage. So I broke down the book into chapters for each age group, did a lot of research. What's happening with the brain? What is it capable of doing? Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And then once I've described that, backed it up with research, not just my opinion, but the current research. And of course, research changes over time. Are eggs good for you or are eggs bad for you? Well, it depends on what year you live in. So it's the current research on what's happening with the brain. And then I supply activities to help move your child up from that level to the next, to the next. And so ideally, if you follow through with the book, your child will be fairly well balanced physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually by the time you've got a teenager ready to go out into the world.
And, I got a chance to read a little bit of the book before our meeting today. So thank you for allowing me to do that. And I also really liked how you sprinkled in metaphors too. I'm somebody who really enjoys reading and learning that way. So I'm sure there are other people out there who are like that as well. But you really talk a lot about how the path is different for each person as well too. And so that each child has their own strengths in those 4 different core areas that you talk about, and how parents really should understand that the path is going to look different for each child, and that's not a negative or a wrong thing. And especially at the end of your book, you give a nice little metaphor. I won't give it away unless you want to talk about it, but I really liked the metaphor that you used in talking about that everybody's path can look a little bit different in life, but it still is the right path for them based on what their strengths are.
Yes, and I'll tell 2 stories if you'll indulge me.
Absolutely.
One is the carpenter and the gardener. And the carpenter sets out to make something. And he takes the wood and he fashions it into a chair. And if he wants to make a table set, he makes 4 chairs exactly the same, so they all match and they look the same. Now the gardener has a rose bush, has a daisy, has some hibiscus. And so he provides the ground, the food, the atmosphere, the water, does a little trimming when necessary, but the hibiscus is the hibiscus and the rose is the rose. And now the question is, which kind of parent are you? Are you the carpenter who tries to make your child the way you want him or her? Or are you the gardener who gives the child what they need to become what they are? And for you and your audience, the neurodiverse, trying to fit somebody who is neurodiverse into a non-neurodiverse world is the square peg in the round hole. It just doesn't work. And so you've got to be more of the gardener. Now go ahead.
I love that. No, I love that. Sorry, continue. I just think that is such a great way of looking at things.
Yeah. And so then the story that you're talking about at the end, and I'm proud of the way I do this. I introduce a story at the beginning of each chapter that kind of gives you the black and white choice of this is what a good parent would do and this is what a bad parent would do. And so the story at the end is a little boy who's walking with his grandfather and they're going to go to the store in the snow. And so they're walking along the road and all of a sudden he sees the little girl from school and he runs over to her house and he says hi and they have a little conversation. Then he runs back to his grandfather. And then they get to the field and there's a cow and he runs over and he pets the cow and has a little cute, good time with the cow and comes back to his grandfather. They get up to the top of the hill and the grandfather is going to teach a lesson. And he says, look, see my path? I walk straight from the house to the store. Look at you. You go this way and you go that way and you go all around. If you don't follow the straight path, you won't reach your goal. And he says, but grandfather, if I followed the straight path, I wouldn't have met Susie and said hi to her. I wouldn't have petted the cow. And so the point is, if you want to achieve a goal, if that's what's important to you, pretty much stay on the path. You got to avoid the distractions. If you want to live a life, then you probably want to stop and smell the roses along the way, because I've known people who are so goal oriented that they really feel they have no life after they've achieved their goals. So yes, 2 different ways of looking at the world: goal oriented or process or path oriented. Is it the journey or is it the destination? I like to argue, in fact, of the journey, because that's the meaning of life, of what you've done with your life and during your life.
And that's why I think I liked that story so much, is because the child still got to the store. He still met that goal, but he did all that living and exploration along the way, which almost made that journey a little bit more exciting, a little bit more enjoyable. But still, in the end, he got where he was going and where he needed to be.
Absolutely.
No, so I was very touched by that. I love stories like that. I thought that was a great metaphor of really showing how you can still get where you're going, but you can enjoy the process. It doesn't have to be this goal oriented, just one way focus. Because you're right, I think you do miss out on a little bit of life if you kind of close yourself off to everything else, when you can still get there but still be open to everything that's going on around you. So I thought that was a great kind of metaphor to show parents and children and students who might read the book too, that you can still get where you want to go, but still have the enjoyment of life happen to you as you're getting there.
And something that I guess for the neurodiverse world, everybody has strengths, everybody has weaknesses. And this is something I learned pretty early in the martial arts. If I'm going to go up against somebody like Mike Tyson, okay, not that I'm necessarily going to win, but I'm not going to hit him in the shoulder where he's got all these huge muscles. I'm going to hit him in the throat where nobody's got muscles. Okay. And so I'm going to use my strongest point against his weakest point in order to survive. In life, we have to build up our strong points, whatever they are. We try to cover our weak points. We block, we guard. Okay, so we cover our weak points. And so if you have a neurodiverse child, what are her strengths? What are her weaknesses? And then how do you build up those weaknesses so they're not a real problem? But how do you emphasize those strengths so that she becomes successful and has a happy, successful life? And not everybody's the same. Not everybody's going to be an NBA star. Not everybody's going to be a Nobel Prize scientist, but everybody can be happy if they find their strengths and weaknesses.
Absolutely. And I completely agree with you in that statement. And with that, let me ask you, as someone who has an educational background, who's been in the school systems, do you think that that's something that we're currently helping to foster in not only in all students, but especially in neurodiverse students?
Sometimes I look back on my years in education and I'm amazed at what I didn't know. And I was in my 20s and thought I was so smart and teaching everybody what I knew. This isn't necessarily neurodiverse, it's more emotional, but I had one kid wrote a story about committing suicide. And I looked at it as a writer and I said, well, you don't have enough detail here. You need to add more detail. And so she went back and tried to kill herself. And her parents, of course, were upset with me and my stupidity. And of course, I was stupid because I didn't see the signs. But that's the sort of emotional education that at least was lacking when I was teaching.
Yeah. I mean, I feel even now that that's only just something that is now starting to come to people's attention and start to scratch the surface.
Yeah. And I've just this past week, I've done some research. I was talking to my local county, trying to offer my book and things to the teachers who are going back to school and the activities and they sent me back their emotional educational programs, and they are actually really good. Somebody has spent time developing emotional education, and the county recommends the teachers use it. I haven't been in there in a classroom in years, so I don't know how much they use it, but the programs are out there. They are available if the school system will use them. Now, neurodiverse, a little bit different. That takes almost not really a special education knowledge, but a special education awareness that you're dealing with somebody who has some issues who can't sit still. And so you do, some of the simple tricks teachers use are, Bobby, can you be my helper? Will you pass out the crayons so that he doesn't have to sit still? And, just simple things like that, help. They say the average classroom, 1/3 of the group, 1/3 of the kids are moving at the pace of the teacher. 1/3 are too fast for the teacher and they're getting bored. So even if they're not neurodiverse, they're still getting bored and looking for something to do. And 1/3 can't keep up with the teacher. And so that every teacher's balance is to try to figure out how to achieve that balance. And one of the classic ways is to take the bright kids, pair them up with the slow kids, and have them be the assistant teacher, have them be the partner and help, so that the bright kid is double learning as he's teaching, and the slow kid has an individual mentor teacher to help him through the problem.
And I feel like that has been a partnership, I guess, for lack of better words, that I know is still used and often used. But I also think that sometimes teachers forget that the child who is not working at the same pace as their peers, sometimes there's other factors that are going on, or because they're not engaged, or the teaching is just not happening in a manner that is best for who they are as a learner. And I think sometimes teachers forget that. I think we sometimes have gotten into this one size fits all mentality. And we often forget that students who might be showing that they're not engaged or they're not with the rest of their peers, it's not that they're not capable, but it's just because they haven't had that opportunity to be taught in a way that is who they are as a learner, or what they need as an individual. So I'm with that said, I'm curious to what inspired you, other than, and I know you've talked about this a little bit, but you have an educational background, you were very passionate about martial arts, but there had to be this thing that made you think there has to be a different way. There has to be this new format, this new approach to how to best work with students. Was there some aha moment that happened, or some specific inspiration that occurred to you throughout your career, or the time that you were practicing martial arts, that goes, there needs to be a different way? This is not the right approach. There needs to be a new approach for how we're addressing and looking at children and their needs.
Well, yes. One of the great martial artists in this country, Grandmaster Jun Rhee, who was a Taekwondo man who basically taught Taekwondo to our Congress and was very powerful in Washington. And he always said, strength in the body, courage in the heart, and knowledge in the mind. So he had a three-pronged attack: physical, mental, and emotional. And I wanted to add the spiritual aspect to that. And that's how I view human beings. And for 20 years, I would write. We did a newsletter to martial arts instructors. My master, who's now a Grandmaster, has a company that influences 700 to 1,000 schools in the U.S. and Canada. And so that was part of my addition to the company. I would write newsletters and magazine articles, not only about business, but about education. And I started pushing the 4 dimensions of people: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, into the martial arts, because that's how I saw it. The education system, to me, pushes the intellectual, the mental dimension, because that's their job. They have SAT scores they have to meet. They have to pass the whatever test the state sets up for them. So if they didn't have an emotional curriculum, which is the assumption I was working on since I was a teacher, but as I said, I've learned in the last week, they do have an emotional curriculum. I don't know if they test on it. I can't imagine they do, but still, they've added that. And so to me, the whole person, which is what I wanted to reach, the whole person has 4 dimensions. Teachers and parents have to realize what they have: a child with 4 dimensions. And so, yes, it's nice to teach them how to read, how to write, how to do arithmetic, but it's also important to teach them how to be a friend, how to talk to people, how to read emotion so that they know when they're upsetting somebody. All right. And morally, how to share, what's right and what's wrong. And hopefully moving them up to the point where they understand the difference between right and wrong, not based on what their friends say or what their teachers say, but kind of a universal principle that it's wrong to kill people. It's wrong to hurt people. And so you try to avoid those things whenever possible.
Do you feel like students today, like right now in this time period, are maybe struggling a little bit more with that social emotional piece compared to maybe students 20, 30 years ago?
I don't know. Let me think about that a moment. Some evidence, of course, is the shootings. We're recording this about 2 weeks after the shooting in Texas. And in my opinion, I'm not a licensed psychologist. In my opinion, the shooter had some emotional problems. The one who 4th of July started shooting up the parade, I think he had some emotional issues. All right, so what can we do about that? You and I can't change the laws. And we can, come November, we can vote for somebody who can change the laws. But in the meantime, as parents, we can raise our children to be better emotionally balanced. And that is one less child who, in my opinion, is likely to go out and grab a gun, or even if we change the gun laws, grab a knife and start hurting people, or even going on social media and saying things that are going to hurt people. And there are study after study that the teenagers and preteens are getting more depressed the more they use social media. And so that, again, is emotional education. First of all, learning not to be so mean on social media, but second, not to take it so seriously. My life isn't Facebook. It's cool. I meet some interesting people. I keep a family that way. Years ago, I'd have to go visit my brother to see the pictures of kids. Now I can see them on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. But I'm not going to believe everything I read there. And I'm not going to compare my life to the life somebody creates on Facebook. This is one of my own pet, my addition to the world of psychology. I call it Frankenstein envy. And Frankenstein envy is when, I'll just take a teenage girl as the most obvious example,
Mm-hmm.
who'll go, oh, I'm so depressed. Sally's got better hair than me, and Kenesha's got better skin than me, and Juanita's so much smarter, and Betty's so much richer. And so she's creating this Frankenstein of the best qualities of all her friends, putting them into this monster, and then comparing herself to that. How can you win?
I like that. I had, I feel like that is such a valid point. And there's been conversations about how, social media is fake and people only show the highlight reel essentially of their life. And then people go, why is my life not up to that standard, or why am I living that life? But you're right. I never thought of it in that Frankenstein envy, as you called it, way before. And that makes such complete sense to me, that it's not just I'm comparing myself to this one person. I'm taking all of these aspects from multiple people and then comparing myself to this monster essentially that you've created in your mind. And I had never thought of it that way before. And that just makes such sense to me, that is why it creates this level of anxiety and depression in people, because it's not just this one comparison, it's this huge comparison, but then you're just taking yourself against it.
Yes. And again, strong points and weak points. I'm looking at their strong points and I'm looking at my weakest point. How do I win? And I mean, just Kim Kardashian, beautiful woman, but does she put stuff up without photoshopping it? Okay. And so can I compare myself, what I see in the mirror, to what I see of one of the most beautiful people in the world, who then goes through a series of corrections to make herself even more beautiful? If I compare myself to that, I'm not going to win. All right, let me back up one more piece of psychology, which is how do you feel, or what do you do when you see somebody who has more than you? One option is to be jealous. And that makes me upset. That person has more money, has better looks, has a better spouse. Oh, makes me so depressed, makes me so angry. Or when you see somebody like that and you say, well, how can I be more like that? What would I have to do to earn that kind of money? How could I improve myself? What would I have to do to look more like that? Can I learn how to get a better haircut, better clothes, better makeup? Right? Can I get in better physical shape? Can I go to the gym? So when you see somebody who's got something, do you get depressed and angry about it because you're jealous, or do you get motivated to be more like that and improve yourself?
I like that, because you're kind of flipping the script there, instead of it being almost, for lack of better words, like a victim mentality of, the world is against me and why can't I? You're saying I can have it. Now I just have to come up with my game plan. If that's what I really want, or those are how I want to feel or what I want to achieve. what action steps do I need to take in order to achieve that? And I like that because it's kind of flipping that script a little bit. Instead of kind of having a what I like to call pity party for one, you're making it more of a goal-oriented action.
And to take that back to parents, now when you see your garden child growing up a certain way, then you help them grow that way. You help them, steer them away from feeling jealous or upset, and steer them toward, okay, you want to be a basketball player? Let's go online and find out some drills to be a basketball player. Oh, you want to be an artist? Let's look at different ways to learn how to be a graphic designer. Oh, not graphic design, you like sculpture? All right, let's buy some clay and play with that. And so you find the child's strength and help them develop it and help them set goals so that they work toward it. Not insanely, you still go and develop a balanced child if you can, but help them develop their strengths. If someone's going to be an Olympic athlete, you're probably not going to put that desire in them. They're going to have it themselves. They're going to look at the gymnast and say, that's what I want to do. And they want to go to the gym every day, and they want to practice, and they want to do their splits at home, and they want blah, 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 blah. And they got that single focus, I want to be a world-class gymnast. You don't put that in them, but you can help them by saying, hey, you didn't do your stretching today. Shouldn't you be doing that? Just little things to help them in that direction. But if I wanted to be a baseball player, that doesn't mean my son has to be a baseball player. I can't relive my life through my son. He's not me. He's got to be who he is. And if he wants to be a surfer, okay, let's get him a surfboard and let's go to the beach every weekend. And help him be a better surfer. And even if he doesn't become a professional surfer, the dedication, the single focus he puts into getting better at what he wants will translate into whatever he wants to do later in life.
I like that. I like that a lot because I do think there are a lot of parents who may be, and I think this becomes a generational thing almost, right? That your parent may have had expectations for you. And so because of their expectations for you, you ended up either making life choices or whatever based off what your parents wanted. And so the next go around when you have kids, now you're trying to kind of relive what you would have wanted, your passions now through your child, because you didn't get a chance to do it because of whatever those expectations were from your parent or the generation ahead. And so what you're saying is you've got to kind of almost stop that cycle and recognize that my child is their own entity. And just like I would have liked to have had that opportunity to pursue passions and interests, I've got to allow my child to do that and just be that guide for them instead of kind of forcing or pushing upon my interest on them.
Yeah, and as far as expectations go, not only expecting what you will become, but expecting that you will be good at it. It's when you start setting expectations on kids where you have to be an A student, maybe that's just not in the cards for your child, especially if he's neurodiverse. Okay, but they can't control the result. You can't control the grade you're going to get on the test, but you can control how much effort you put into it. And so early on, not in the toddler years, but soon after, start praising effort over results. Whatever you do, I want you to try your best. Did you try your best? Yeah, then okay, then you did good. Now, how can we try better? How can we try different next time to get a better result? But try your best. And so whether, again, that's surfing, baseball, dance, art, whatever it is, as long as you're putting your best effort into it, that's what I want to encourage in the child, as opposed to, oh, that painting looks like junk. What do you think Picasso's parents said about his drawings? So he did okay.
Right. Well, Tim, let me ask you this. I love this conversation. So if my listeners wanted to learn more about you or your work, or they wanted to reach out with you or get in touch, what would be the best way for them to do so?
It's a timeless, shameless plug. Number one is it's in the book. And if I can get the lighting right, it's Raising Four-Dimensional Children in a two-dimensional world. I'll just hide my face. And it's available on Amazon. Just type in Raising Four Dimensional and you'll get there. But what I've done that I'm proud of is I have my website. And so D is in dimension, it's 4D-2D.com. That's the website about the book. And I'm not looking to get rich. I'm comfortable. I'm happy with my life. You can get the whole book for under $5. But if you're economically challenged and you just want to try it out, you can buy the chapter for your child's age for under $1.
Oh, wow.
You got a preschooler, you're not sure what to do, how this works. Invest $1, get the chapter, see how it works. If it works good for you, then get the rest of the book. If not, it's only $1. And that's again at 4D as in dimension, 4D-2D.com. Don't forget the dash, you'll end up in China somewhere. That's the way the internet is. All right. And so that tells you about the book. There's a section about me there if you're even remotely interested. But if you've come this far in the interview, you've got enough about me. Let's focus on you and your kids.
Love that. I love that. And so before my last question, let me ask, is there anything that I didn't get a chance to ask you, anything that you feel very passionate about, or a message that you want to make sure that you share that I didn't get a chance to touch on with you today?
Be you. You know? And there's probably a better you waiting to come out. And I'm going to be 69 this month. I'm still learning. I'm still working on myself. Like I said, I learned stuff about the educational system last week, and I was happy to learn that. So, effort. Based on your effort, if you sit around on Facebook all day, watching television all day, chances are you're not becoming the best you. But if you keep working on yourself, whatever your passion is, whatever age you are, get better at what you love, get better at what you want to be, because there's still a better you waiting down the line.
I love that. So that might tie into my final question that I'm going to ask you. So I like to ask this to every single one of my guests that come on the show. If you could send a message to students and or young adults right now that may be struggled with school, either academically or socially, emotionally, what would the message be that you would share with them?
Seek help and be careful who you get help from. Okay, so if you're going to the internet to get help, odds are not high. It's there, especially if you're going to social media for help, it may not be there. On the internet, it's there. It's the biggest library I've ever seen. I no longer walk into a library like I used to when I was young. Now I just look on the internet, and there are answers out there. Your friends may have some of the answers. Your parents probably have more of the answers than you think they have. But the answers are out there. Don't give up. Keep looking. I'm still learning so much. My current thing, because I'm old, is health. And I'm learning about health and how to be healthier at my age. And so whatever your challenge is, if you want to be prettier, learn how to do better makeup. Learn how to diet and have a better shaped body. Learn how to exercise. If you want to be smarter, spend time reading, even on the internet. But if you want to be a better basketball player, learn how the basketball pros practiced and look at the drills and practice the drills. Whatever it is, you can be a better you. The answers are out there. Just beware. And this is another key piece of advice I give often. Don't take advice from anybody more screwed up than you. They will give it. Absolutely, they will give it. And when you look at them and say, okay, if I take your advice, will my life be like yours? And if that's not a good thing, question their advice. But if they have achieved what you want to achieve, model that success. It's the old education system. Find a master, study under that master. That's what I did in the martial arts. If you want to be a carpenter, you find a master carpenter. If you want to be an artist, find a master artist. If you want to be successful in life, find somebody with a happy family who's successful in life and do what they do. I'm sorry, that was a real long answer.
No, that was a great answer. I love it. I like the long answers because I think sometimes it is complex, right? It's, life advice is not just this one short answer. So I think that was wonderful. And I thank you so much for sharing that information. And I want to thank you for coming on and just sharing a little bit about you and your perspective with my listeners today. Thank you so much for your time today, Tim.
And thank you for having me. I enjoyed it tremendously.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for tuning into the Neurodiverse Teacher Podcast. I look forward to seeing you again soon.